live back again, 6 week in a row for a Proof of Beauty podcast where we get together and just share our minds, touch base, talk all things proof of beauty and current events. Uh, how was your week, guys?
Good.
Relatively productive,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah,
You know, the world's not falling apart price wise.
yeah,
right.
it could be worse. It could be much worse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
a lot of
good
bloodshed out
things,
there.
internally, a lot of work is being done.
Hmm.
Finding things.
ABF season. It's ABF season. It's
It's
time.
Right.
it's yeah, a lot of ABF work right now for me. So and actually now at this point for quite a few of us is getting it out the door, starting to hopefully grow something cool. Yeah.
Snowball, flywheel, something please happen.
Honestly, the more I sit on ABF and think about just like the principle of it, the more excited I get. It feels like a onboarding tool in some ways, which is really exciting. And so I'm excited to see,
This could be
how it
universal.
catches.
Like kids in school could definitely play around with this, and like that could be their first just foray, like diving into like rendering and how NFTs work and shit like that. I mean, it's actually a very good UI, just surface level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's if we were here wagering USDC of what ABF will become, I don't think any of us will win.
Yeah, there's just no way.
It's we can only make guesses at this point of if we work hard and grow it, how the flywheel will flywheel the system, which directions. We have had the range of ideas, right? Towards using it as a short story system, towards art, towards the capabilities of renderers, towards the capabilities of BrainF itself. Our approach to the community. Yeah, like the more I think about it, as you have described it, they're just like the more I'm excited about it and its
Mhm.
potential, but also the more I'm like getting humbled by, I wouldn't be surprised if the system becomes something that we never quite anticipate as a student.
Yeah, I can see that too. There's so many directions that it can go creatively. And the more we talk about it, the more I'm realizing how really a community could come into the app or the DApp itself and kind of create its own little world within the BrainFuck ecosystem, right? And so you kind of have like what you're saying, like this situation where we can't really pinpoint or point a finger exactly what it's going to become. We just know it's going to become something, and it's going to become something really cool that hasn't been created before. And anytime you're exploring, uncharted waters, it's exciting. And so I'm really, really stoked about BrainFuck, guys. This is a cool project, and for those listening, you guys are gonna want to keep up on the information, keep up on the news, check out the BrainFuck Twitter page. Lots of things happening, and I know Dave's getting closer and closer to revealing more information on what exactly this product is.
Yeah, I think once it's out, I'm excited for us to all sit down on a podcast and just, just, just uh, um, ramble and discuss,
Hmm.
digest what the thing is, and actually talk about it in full fairness and show off the demos as well. But we're getting there very soon. Once it's there, I think all of the speculation we're talking about, we can talk about what we're actually thinking about. That's gonna be exciting.
Right. Yeah, that is going to be exciting. So did you guys want to, talk for a little bit about some of the current events from the week? I know it was a big week. We got a few different articles we can pull up and go over. We can just kind of hop in there and see what's up.
Sure.
Why don't I just get this pulled up, maximize this? We will push this one back and we will talk about this later. Why don't we talk about what happened with 3AC a little bit? I know we talked about this last week. It looked like the company was in a position where it was going to default, and it looks like it has So Voyager Digital issued a notice of default to Three Arrows Capital for failure to make the required payments on a previously disclosed loan of 15,250 Bitcoin and 300 million USDC. So
Classic
3AC
stuff.
is not looking too hot right now, guys.
Are they
Yeah.
completely fucked? How does this work exactly, David?
Well, go ahead, Jive,
go ahead.
Dave.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
As well, I won't say I fully grasp bankruptcy processes, but as I understand it, there's clearly the company's in debt by a lot. And last time I remembered it was about $1.5 billion in debt. But then they do have upwards of a few hundred million of liquid capital of some of assets. And so at this point, all the creditors are now pretty much sharks, right?
Right.
With blood in the water.
They don't get one last bet, one last time to win it all back.
At this point, they're just like, we want something out of our what apparently 15K worth of Bitcoin, like loaned out.
Yeah, that's
So,
crazy, right?
It's literally like roulette. It's like, all right, put the last 400 mil on red to see what like.
well, at that point, that's like a financial crime,
Yeah.
as I understand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
In most jurisdictions, and the white collar crime. But so at this point, it's a matter of the legal procedures to figure out who gets first dibs on what's left over. Pretty much, as I interpret a bankruptcy default, where there's a lot of creditors coming in.
Right.
And dependent towards 3AC, I think, and also the legal firms and related, there's quite a bit of power being placed in pretty much a lot of private boardrooms into who gets to get access through 3ACs. And since it is a limited liable situation, these certain people that are managing this process have a lot of political capital to do some stuff, and they can be trading political capital for safety. But again, if you do it in a bad way, I think in the States it's technically still a financial crime if you were to manipulate the debt process, the default process, in a way that is like incredibly manipulative towards consumers or towards a large body of your creditors. But it's I mean, again, it's very dependent to jurisdiction, I think, towards how default appears to work. But we're seeing this with all the other companies, right? So blood in the water, they're pretty much trying to get as much as they can get out of what's left over. And this is when you chip in your favors now, right? Like this is when you like right, like let us in first, and then let the other fuckers are like go.
Yeah. I feel like that's a great insight on the situation. I mean, whenever a company defaults, you're going to have your liquidation preferences for your different creditors or investors, and that liquidation preference might be called something different depending how it's structured, right? But in principle, it's the same principle where somebody's going to get their money back first before you get a piece, and if they can't claw back their money, they're going to sell your assets and try to claw back what they can from those assets, right?
Yeah.
And so but one thing that I noticed in the article itself, it says the platform continues to operate and fulfill customer orders and withdrawals, which is interesting.
You mean
I'm curious
3AC?
It says here, Voyager intends to pursue recovery of 3AC, and in its discussions with the company's advisors, it's looking at legal remedies available. And so it kind of looks like Voyager's kind of steering the direction. It's not explicitly clear actually in this whether or not this is 3AC keeping its order books open or not. But I would imagine that right now you have bigger creditors kind of breathing down the neck of 3AC, right? Trying to ensure that things are managed as well as they could be in such an awful situation, right? So unfortunately, there's probably a lot more going on behind the scenes than we have access to, right? So
if things are all right, I think it should be the case that all the creditors will have to agree to a third party administrator that comes in, or legal firm administrator, what do you want to call it,
Right.
that helps facilitate such a complex divesting of assets.
Yeah.
But this is when the lawyers come out and play, right? Like this is quite beyond, I think, my own understanding, a lot of our understanding, whatever is
Right.
happening.
Yeah. Big company, a lot of different things, people involved. Even I believe there was like a stipulation where now there's an issue with the jurisdiction of Singapore. Like maybe they had some sort of a right to operate only up to a certain size of the fund within Singapore and only up to a certain number of clients. And I guess they didn't clearly disclose how much of or how large the fund is and how, who their clients were. And so I guess there's some legal discourse now here as well. And so they seem to be in a really big hot mess. But we can move on to the next article if you guys want, unless you have anything to add.
Sure. Okay. No, they're all in the same thread.
Yeah. So Goldman Sachs is a leading investor to buy up the assets of Celsius Network. This is pretty interesting. A $2 billion raise from investors to buy up distressed assets. I'm really curious what you guys think of this, because in my limited opinion, I would think that this would be kind of pointless. Like, why are they? I understand that there's talent and that there's software essentially here that they're trying to acquire, but beyond the protocol, beyond the talent, what interest could they really have in Celsius if the Celsius network has already, shown that it doesn't work? Maybe that's a very close-minded opinion, but go ahead.
It seems kind of straightforward, right? They're basically like, Coinbase is also kind of doing similar things by buying up staking and shit like that, like companies that do staking. I think they're just going to try to flip it around into like very centralized, regulated staking services, essentially, or like collateralized loan services. Like they don't really have any mechanism to do that.
We need to clarify: is distressed assets in this sense? Are they buying the company, or are they buying the company's assets? And the company's assets does include a lot of crypto, like a lot of wealth, right? Are they doing like a discount purchase into the assets, where they're like, hey, clearly it sounds like you need a US dollar to do what you need to do, or whatever.
It wouldn't be called buying Celsius Network, right? It would just be like
because the language of the website, it's like buying the distressed assets of the company. If you're buying the company, you're buying everything and also carrying on the debts of that company, right? But they're not. It doesn't sound like the structuring. It sounds like to me it's like a fire sale to get what Celsius has. I don't know. Like I only have a headline to work off of, but it also sounds like plus or minus BlockFi has that thing going on too. It's like a fire sale for institutional to come in and just buy, cheap crypto.
Swear by BitPay, someone.
Please.
If it's an asset purchase and not a company purchase, I think there's a fundamental nuance that is more of a reflection on getting what's left of these husks at really good prices relative to the market, even at the current market price, which I think is still really good. They're going to get it even cheaper, probably, right? So,
right. Well, one thing that I'd be curious to learn more about myself, like I would like to dive into what you were saying, like the distressed assets part of it. Like what qualifies here? Like, are they buying the cryptocurrencies? Are they just buying the protocol? Are they acquiring the team and the team's talent?
I don't think any of those, in my eyes, is what you're purchasing with $2 billion. Like, which I'm gonna have to pull it up right now. but it has to do with the actual crypto within that thing. Like whatever they still have left, right? They still have a lot of money being wealth managed. It's clear that the company is in a place of debt that they're not solvent, and so it seems like Goldman just stepping in and say, hey, like I want to be able to buy whatever you're asset managing, because technically it's customer funds, but DeFi system, they have a responsibility towards you as a customer, but when the company goes under, the company has to fight for themselves, and your assets are theirs to fight for, right? So if the company just needs freaking US dollar, they're just gonna sell assets they have under management and get it out the door, keep the company solvent or alive, right? And this is the kind of claim that a lot of people were kind of pissed when Coinbase said, if the company goes bankrupt, your assets are technically on our table and we can facilitate whatever kind of necessary things within our transactions. So it's like, it's yours until it's bad. It's yours until the days are like all held, and we will come in and seize and do what we need to do. So this seems like to me like one of the scenarios, as far as I understand, where maybe they're saying like we got a lot of debt, we need capital, or they are saying like, hey, like we need to be selling assets that we do have to get whatever, right? Like it seems like they're trying to do something, and now the company is thinking of themselves more than they're thinking of, customer survival, I think. And to this point, I remember there was a great thread about this, but this is where it gets a little bit interesting and probably and usually not very good for the consumer when there's not a lot of regulations on how these asset management systems are going to play out. So at this point, if you do have customer funds in there, I interpret it, which I could be wrong, as this is Celsius. And it's up to Celsius to decide how they want to use their own money that you gave them to, with an expectation that it was supposed to do something else, right? And that's where Goldman's coming in. It's like, shit, nobody's gonna buy 12 billion, like X amount of billion. We're the only guy, so we got the poker chips to negotiate a good deal, right? And they're gonna use that power. And so it seems like right now they're like testing the waters to see is there $2 billion of cash sitting out there that's willing to participate in this group buy in some ways.
Right. Yeah.
Again, I mean, I don't say I'm quite familiar with these occurrences. I only learn it mostly through how DeFi interacts with these systems.
Right.
So I'm certain there's more subject matter experts on this than me through my own random tangential experiences learning about it.
Absolutely. There's definitely a lot of there's going to be a lot of financial and financial oversight and regulation that guides the way things get handled here, right? I guess neither of us are experts in that field, so it'd be kind of difficult to have complete oversight of what's actually happening here. But it's just very interesting to me just to see the length that which other organizations are going to try to preserve the assets that were developed on Celsius. It's just interesting because within crypto, within the ecosystem that we work in, Celsius didn't seem to be honestly, it didn't seem to be too popular until like a year ago, right? And we watched how quickly that built up and came down. And maybe you guys have more history with Celsius than I do, but it is interesting to see how quickly things kind of toppled here. And I read in the article, it said they had 1.7 million users, which, if I'm not mistaken, may be more than we actually have in registered unique ETH wallets. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I think so.
Right.
I gotta pull up Dune to know that one again.
Yeah. I haven't looked in a little while, but it's interesting to think about. The numbers are probably close. Unfortunately,
well, if you're offering like 10 whatever percent on stables, it's
hard
relatively I think they made such a strong implication that the asset management sounded like they're not deviating from the stable that you provided. But then I don't know where you're going to get 10% from a USDC coin. You have to be in a riskier stable to get such a yield. But I mean, like, this story works again and again and again and again and again. You offer X yield, you build a good UX that largely eases the mind. It's very convincing, and you would want to believe that when everybody's talking highly about this thing, that what's the point of saying counter arguments again and not using when the FOMO in crypto is so real, right? So towards that, it's hard to fault, but also too is, like finance is a very adversarial system, and crypto even more so. And we're seeing a huge play out where, fending for themselves, they had to do so many not irrational but horrible actions towards the global market, and then blood in the water. Large trades started to see if they can liquidate their margin positions on Maker or whatever. So if anything, it does show just how adversarial, how hostile of a financial market we do have to operate in, which is a reflection of the public nature. I think a lot of these DeFi financial positions, you can know very clearly, and then in part having AMMs. The beauty of AMM is it's expected. You understand what they do, but also that means attacking an AMM and performing a desired change towards the market is relatively easy to approach, given that you have the capital to do so, because the parameters are pretty simple, right? And to crash a market, you just have to simulate the math correctly and get it into the blockchain before a front run comes in or whatever, right? So it's as much as crypto is all these like nice rounded buttons and pretty colors. It's
pretty UI.
It is a very it's a very dangerous competitive environment. And at least I like to believe I think that's part of crypto's biggest mythos is in adversary we find strength, right? Like we become less fragile because we are literally pitting the smartest people against each other day on day out, and in through this we'll get more robust as a system. So there's ways you can interpret it, right? But at least in a positive note, I see this as just crypto doing what crypto does best, which is filter through people that are not maybe participating in it in the way that will keep you living in this space. So it's a very much the survival of the fittest, and it's part of the culture.
I'm curious if you think that's what happened with our next story here. I can pull it up. It's kind of on the theme of acquisitions and sorting through people of the industry here. Let me pull this up here. So FTX signed an option to acquire BlockFi for up to $240 million. If I'm not mistaken, so BlockFi went under, right? And it looks like FTX is bailing them out.
So this looks like they're buying. This is an actual buying of the company, right?
Includes a $400 million revolving for a.
So they're like, they want to purchase this IP, right? And then the company is giving out pretty much saying, hey, like, here's a fuckload of money that we're going to give you as a loan, and you figure out how to get out of your problem, and we'll pretty much now own a lending organization. At least that's what the language on this Bloomberg article looks like to me.
Right.
Because there's a very big distinction between buying the assets of the company and buying the company. Right? Like,
you're right. Yeah.
Very different things. And if you're buying a company, you're also buying the debts at this point. You're buying the incumbent responsibility of a company that has a liquidity crunch. So instead of buying the atomic components making this company. 240 mil. I thought they were. Yeah, that's a discount price, right? I remember the
It
last.
feels like a discount price.
I feel like they were like what was their last round? Like BlockFi. I feel like it had to be a unicorn, right? They're so I think they had a Series E recently, not recently, but the last time. Their Series E, they raised 500 with a valuation of $4 billion.
Oh
So
man,
this is a fire sale.
Massive fire sale. Yeah,
right?
it's
Buying a
insane.
company for 250 when it was last evaluated at $4 billion, man.
And this is because 3AC messed up, right?
Well, I would like to think both messed up.
I guess they offered
right.
the over collateralized loans.
Right, you didn't do the credit assessment
Yeah.
properly, giving out the money, but yeah, I think 3AC and BlockFi had a massive like credit line and whatever. And that probably brought them under. Is it BlockFi that was one of the companies that like pretty much gave a fairly uncollateralized loan? It's pretty much predicated on the credit of 3AC, which is shady stuff.
Very shady.
But maybe it was BlockFi. I don't know who was the ones specifically who did that. Maybe it was BlockFi. Because that looks like the case.
Yeah, man, it's actually gnarly when you zoom out and you look at all of like the craziness that's happening just around the 3AC event, and just to kind of try to understand who the actors were and what their roles were and what exactly transpired. I mean, it all looks very sketchy, quite frankly. It just seems like a lot of shady dealings to make as much money as possible, and then it doesn't work out, and they're trying to find out how to make as much money as possible from the product that didn't work out,
yeah, like that's like, yeah. I guess in some ways this is, if we didn't expect this in crypto, then you were really, 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 really idealistic and romantic about this
absolutely
world, right? Like,
yeah.
We create systems and rules that does not discriminate against the size of a player. So we will have larger players, and so yeah, like a 3AC going down will probably define a lot of our future era of hedge firms and large capital players within this market. And also, I think a lot of crypto lenders needed the reality check of like, yeah, you need to be giving out good loans, right? And I like to believe there was a huge false sense of confidence from these massive lending money market DeFi protocols, the likes of OV and Compound, that they were they've been able to so strongly stabilize through its inception and keeping its own self solvent. And I think that may have created a confidence where, like, yeah, loans don't go bad; they just get liquidated. And protocol lending systems don't go bad; they just have to, liquidate, right? But then we're seeing it in Solend and now even in centralized players. It's like still good old fashioned credit, right? And credit risk.
Yeah. Actually, on that note, like, I'd like to pick both your brains a little bit around the whole like Solend catastrophe that recently went down and see what you guys know about it. I mean, from what I can tell, the guy started a DAO and basically used the DAO to make a what would you call it? A swift acquisition of another individual's wallet as to prevent liquidation. Am I correct?
Pretty much. Towards a degree, it was a massive position, right, on borrowing USDC against Solana token, the base, whatever, the native token, and people were all being crap, that position's public there, and I think that created a huge a panic where everybody who was providing USDC as collateral started draining the system. to the point where like there was literally not a single USDC that you can get out of the system. You can't like borrow USDC because there's none left, right?
Oh wow.
And so at that point, you know, the protocol was already surging towards 600% APY borrow rates for USDC,
Oh my gosh.
and in a normal market, that should bring people down, right? So it's like you're paying 6 times every year to borrow that principal. That's insane. But the problem is when the only person when that lender is a singular person and is participating in a non-optimal way, you're kind of fucked, right? Like if he was playing optimally, then it would have not have been a problem because he would have probably closed the position and not incur such a high interest rate penalty. But he didn't, and he was irrational in that way. But because of his irrationality, the only way the system can now solve the problem is do a massive liquidation event, sell his collateral into USDC, effectively bringing back enough USDC for the pool to be balanced. But to do that, you need to be able to liquidate what was like 130 something million Solana,
Wow.
USDC Solana, and on Ethereum, that's just like another afternoon, right? Like 130 mil liquidation, that's fine, but if you liquidate 130 mil, you got to think about like what actually has to happen. Well, you need to have a crap load of arbitrage opportunities for a lot of people to want to be able to participate, right? And somebody has to have about $130 million. Like your market has to have $130 million worth of USDC sitting there ready to be deployed and willing to buy Solana from you, right? And if that's not the case, you're going to cause a massive cascading event that would crater your liquidity, as there's a huge panic where there's like huge sell-off pressure and there's not enough people willing to purchase it, right? And so the DAO had to make a very hard decision, which was if we liquidate like this, like the protocol intended, we would just nuke Solana back to like the 20 whatevers, right? Like so the only way they were doing it, so they kind of threatened the guy. It was like, okay, like you got to do something. So they made a governance proposal that really was majority voted. And that proposal reflected that we're going to seize all your collateral and your assets under the principle that the only way we can liquidate this in a way that's healthy is to do an OTC with a private firm that has 100 something worth money that you liquidate with us at a OTC level price.
Wow.
And I don't know if it actually followed through. I kind of stopped following after that point, but I joked it's like a peer-to-peer loaning market at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like it, and yeah, it I don't know. I mean, the system technically did what it was supposed to do, but it was under such a bad event of singular actors, and having a DeFi universe that is unfortunately or just case is very, 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 very young, right? And
Right.
I reflect upon this on a lot of DeFi on different chains. It's like Ethereum's biggest benefit is we've been doing it for a while, and there's a lot of institutional players and and singular players out there running systems to help protect the markets and how they work and function, right? And if Solana doesn't have that, and you're offering like 5 to 10 to 15% yield, you're causing a problem when these days happen, right? And so it's also not cool that their way of addressing the problem is to pretty much backdoor themselves out. And the problem is that sets precedent now.
Right.
And sets a culture, I think, indirectly in their DeFi world that like when worse comes, it's better to, you know, do a hard rescue than let the system of the philosophies play out, which I don't discredit them for doing that, because I mean that's why ETH Classic exists, because we made that really hard call. So we gotta see how it plays out in the long term for DeFi on Solana. I wouldn't be surprised through just sheer propaganda to equality that this is going to be a very easily forgotten event in a few years, and it just becomes, yeah, Solana's DeFi school again, right? It could be easily forgotten with the right people shilling endlessly for that network.
Be one of those transactions maybe we note in case hash ever goes multi-chain.
We've thought of a Solana from the beginning, and maybe one day, but it's quite a foreign network for us to go on, and the thing goes down way too often.
No doubt. Close for business.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that, Dave. That was really insightful. I think we'll move on from some of the finance heavy topics and kind of jump into NFT land a little bit here. Some more acquisition news, but NFT acquisition news. So let's jump in. eBay acquired KnownOrigin. This actually happened about 8 days ago, I believe. Yeah, June 22nd. We could have probably covered it last week, but we missed it. Now, I believe this is one of those acquisitions where they straight up purchased the platform, right? So they didn't just purchase the asset; they purchased KnownOrigin. Today, KnownOrigin isn't as popular, but I'm pretty sure that everybody in NFT land would be aware what KnownOrigin is. Correct?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good exit price for whoever was part of the KnownOrigin build up.
There's an undisclosed price on here, unfortunately, so we don't got that info.
Yeah, so I think that's not surprised. I think from what I've interpreted from what eBay's been doing with collectibles, like trading cards towards, sneakers and other assets, and facilitating those in a settled, proper way, it seems very sensible to purchase a issuance and marketplace platform for NFTs. And it sounds like of all the current protocols, or not protocols, but platforms like KnownOrigin is probably one of the most willing to participate in such a exit.
Right.
Some of the protocols, as I think of it, like Zora to do whoever want to sell themselves, I think. Foundation doesn't seem like that. I would be surprised. Foundation sells themselves to an eBay. Super Rare has their own token, which I think that kind of plates things. And they have their own DAO. Rarible has their token. Who else is out there? Gemini's gateway.
Super Rare has their own token.
Yeah. Coinbase NFT is still a ghost town.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't include NFTX in this group here, right?
Yeah, but they ICO'd, right, or IFO'd or whatever. Like they did do an initial offer. So those are not really a purchasable asset, I think, at equity level. So if you want in and you don't want to go to 0 to 1, I think KnownOrigin is a
pretty good buy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bad buy. And not surprised. And it's gonna be that time, right? Like because we're already seeing all the companies that needed to raise money, they raised their rounds and finished it. And I think we're at the point where now we're seeing like the companies that want out, they're gonna get one out. So they're gonna get exit clause. Figure out how they're gonna want to properly exit or gracefully exit. Because if they didn't raise a round by now, like what are you doing, right? Like like a fat round and get yourself a really nice evaluation. So I mean, it's been a while. I've actually been on KnownOrigin. I remember from like way back, way back.
Do you guys own any NFTs on KnownOrigin?
Oh, I used to. Not anymore.
Yeah.
Way back in 2018, I may have owned a few. As they were one of the few. Them and Super Rare were the few like art places. That think you can buy crypto art, and so. I owned a few then, but like, man, this website has not changed since I've been on it a few years ago.
Our the open piano Robness piece from Publico actually came out on Known Origin.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually scooped it up, but I'm curious what happens with Known Origin, and the only NFTs that I have on there were created by Robness. So I'm curious how Robness also responds if he's like, oh no, I want nothing to do with eBay, so I'm no longer going to be posting my NFTs on Known Origin, or because you do see people respond like that in the space, right? And
Yeah.
so
Do
whenever
you
something
think
like this
they're
happens,
gonna like do a massive fiat play, try to make NFTs
I think they'd be
fiatable?
foolish not to. I mean, they're going to make, they'll probably do a similar thing to OpenSea and allow credit card onboarding as just a way of getting more people into NFTs, right? Like, I haven't used eBay recently, but I know eBay built up like a massive name for itself in collectibles, even
Yeah.
bigger than it was in the last 2 decades, just in the last 2 years, right? During the pandemic collectible hype cycle there,
Yeah.
which has kind of come down since, right? And so I'd imagine what eBay is trying to do is just trying to solidify its position, obviously with all of these different collectibles. Kind of a lot of these collectible companies are working with NFT protocols and looking for ways to create their own NFTs, right? So what I'd be curious about is to see if the auction mechanics are included for NFTs. Like eBay has such a famous auction mechanic, right? And quite honestly, like the Known Origin auction was okay, but eBay's is better. And so I'd be curious to see what aspects of Known Origin are changed, what happens with eBay as a platform, and if there's maybe a future where eBay and Known Origin are more intertwined, perhaps. Maybe not. I do believe like the Known Origin name has value, so they'll probably keep the brand Known Origin. I could be wrong about that, but I'm more curious on a front to see if this is something where they want to merge protocols or merge technology. And obviously things are drastically different, but there are ways, right? Especially when it comes to just taking a UI that really worked well for them on one of their web pages and incorporating that into Known Origin, right? So curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, I stand by the position that it's going to take a while for them, mainly not out of reflection that they don't want to, but organizational challenges.
Right.
So I grew up in
Man,
the Bay
there's going to be
Area.
yeah.
I've certainly driven by the eBay headquarters
Mhm.
with my parents, and I've
Yep.
actually been in there for a hackathon when I was younger.
Mhm.
But it
Hmm.
will require and demand quite an acceptance and shift of mindset for such a
Yeah.
large company to be able to ingest the philosophy, the team, the technology, and the work of the mindset to operate a known origin NFT settlement issuance protocol
Hmm.
into the greater beast. Which can they do it? Certainly. It's more of a matter of political willpower internally. To do it, I think.
Right.
But then we can say, which I think is even the next subject, like Facebook, right? Like they have clearly enough political willpower to want to have first class support
Right.
for their NFT experience. But then they're
Mhm.
not really being that ambitious. They're not like creating an actual settlement system, right? They're just sticking with very simple stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be an interesting organization, which you would make a strong argument to be said that if anything, I think a lot of companies, even crypto companies inside and also Web2 companies, were all caught by surprise by the NFT movement, and they're all have or maybe still have fairly half-baked attack strategies to have a play in this market. I don't think a lot of people. I think the fact that OpenSea is so powerfully strong in here as a player is more of a reflection that nobody saw it coming, and then everybody's now scrambling together a NFT strategy that has any amount of sensibility, right? And
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, and Coinbase NFTs, it was very half-baked in my eyes.
Yeah.
And you can say that to an argument for a lot of other, even DeFi or central or like our Web3 companies, that I wouldn't be surprised if organizationally internally there was a lot of people who loved NFTs, but they had no practicality when it comes to what they're going to do about it until boom. And at that point, you know, you are playing catch up.
Yeah, so like why did Matcha like why did 0x team at the time that they did do Matcha when like Uniswap was just taking off? They thought they could like
question.
capture that market.
Good
and
question,
start doing,
Mhm.
like NFT stuff because they already had the protocol ready for NFTs, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the time when Matcha came out, for one, NFTs was dead. There was no NFT volume that was meaningful. For 0x, it was a very natural transition when they were building, when pretty much everybody was dedicated to 0x API, which is the liquidity protocol that makes Matcha work.
But they had the NFT swapper originally. That I remember this product because I was inspired by that UI. So that's
Oh
why
yeah, yeah. I mean, I worked on
why,
it indirectly. Yeah.
why not? Like they already had it ready. They had the UI and all the shit ready. Why not just slap that fucker in Matcha? You know.
To not reveal everything, there was not. It was not considered a priority by certain people.
Classic.
That you
Yeah, no doubt.
that I'm not going to say any of their names, but it was not a priority, and some of the higher ups dictating Matcha's future didn't really see it as a direction. But there were mock-ups.
Yeah, I mean, I have a funny same shit. I
Integrations.
feel like every company does the same thing. I feel like literally
Yes.
they're always blindsided, right? It's actually funny because BitPay at the 2022 BTC Miami conference, they had 5 minutes of speaking time, and the only product they showed off was the BitPay Chrome extension. The last thing I built before I left, and I did that. I mean, first of all, that was the absolute lowest priority. In fact, I built it in secret and get on GitHub open source that fucker right away.
Oh shit!
So like, there's nothing you can do about it. I'm building it in real time, and and so it was me and another engineer. But it's
I mean,
I think
I don't want to fault all these organizations. It's a reflection of a very data-driven organization. When you're very data-driven, you need to have retroactive behavior to qualify your decision-making over a very intuitional-driven organization where you're like just kind of YOLOing into the dark. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of NFT people as Zerks. That we were all quite. I mean, if you look at the people that left 0x that are working on NFT projects, they range from some of the top 10 market cap projects down to, I'm gonna say down to us, right? Down to us, right? Like we have the full gamut, right? Like we have companies that have massive things. We have people just doing it on the solo basis. We clearly all enjoyed NFTs. And there is still, which, not to disqualify or disingenuously say this towards a lot of my old comrade at arms, I still think the 0x is kind of half-assing it a little bit, but I don't see there's a stronger pathing. Like I love what they are trying to do to make it, but like OpenSea at a technological basis with the newest protocol, Seaport.
Well, I mean, I think it's important actually to notice how companies operate. Doesn't matter how big you are, you're not big enough to fall, in my opinion, or no matter how smart your team is, right? And also the best ideas come out of YOLOing. Like this whole NFT thing was pretty much born out of CryptoKitties, which then you have to ask yourself, why the fuck did those guys even make that in the first place? If you know anything about Dapper Labs, they actually come from a company called Axiom Zen, a Canadian-based incubator, whatever the fuck that means. Basically, what that means is like they are a bunch of they have a bunch of money and they just throw it at weird ideas. And there's very few companies that operate like that. But if you look at what they built, everything is a masterclass of design. They're all completely unrelated. and you have to ask yourself, why the fuck did they make that? But it's all like
Well,
really great ideas, right?
to play devil's advocate, a YOLOing strategy doesn't get you venture capital money in the most strict sense. And if you need venture cap, you need to have a case to make of a hockey puck growth style, right? And
but they're already operating in very fluid like rules of engagement.
well, to be fair, OpenSea was literally scraping the barrel until this happened, right? So everybody thought OpenSea was a fucking failure, right? Like,
and they will eventually be a failure. That's what I'm saying, right? But also, I think for 0x, I mean, look, they had the most fluidity of any kind of venture-backed company. I would say that in comparison to other startup companies, right, outside crypto world. So if that's the case, then yeah, that's the way
I like what you're saying.
Yeah, especially crypto companies have the most fluidity in terms of doing stuff like this.
When it comes to that group of companies, like Coinbase even was part of that. When Coinbase
I've given one more example,
paradigm.
actually. One more example of Coinbase is Coinbase Wallet was originally called Toshi. And the only reason they did that, the only reason they called it Toshi is because Brian Armstrong was worried of having any association with a non-custodial wallet. And this is also a very similar mistake this is actually BitPay and Coinbase are the same age. They both made the exact same mistakes of basically not giving a single fuck about the wallet app. And if they dominated that space early on, I think we would be.
I'm gonna be honest. I come down to is hindsight's 2020. Like it, being on the ground zero. I think Ash, you also been in the ground zero. It's just like.
No, I don't. I really don't think it's hindsight. It's really not a hindsight issue, right? Because I think even at that time, it was very obvious what was going on here, especially even in Bitcoin.
Well, I didn't think it was obvious. DeFi didn't exist in my form.
Yeah, but CryptoKitties was
pretty much shattered to hell.
There was a lot of. It's obvious because there's a lot of evidence prior to the DeFi movement. Just looking at Bitcoin, right? Looking at the development of Bitcoin. Everybody knew you can't run a Bitcoin node on your phone. So that leaves the option of simple payment verification wallets, SPV as it's called.
So I don't see that as enough of an argument for an organization to make them. For a person, sure, but I don't think
then why you
develop it with the strongest will
they already developed. They were already developing it, right? They were already developing with 2-3 people. Why not just?
Which again, to me, that sounds like a hindsight's 2020 problem.
Yeah.
Which is if you knew more and you had more guts, you would have done it as an organization, but they didn't.
No, I'm not talking about necessarily putting more resources, right? Everything happens in slow motion. Really, it was just a matter of bravery in terms of slapping their name on it. If they slapped their name on it, we would have saw way more playing around with wallet technology.
Well, now this was part of an era where like 0x was scared of it. Everybody was scared of it. Yeah. Slapping their name around everything. Now we're we're in the inverse. But
I don't think that's not a hindsight problem. I think that there's many examples.
Well, I still think it's a hindsight problem. To be honest, it sounds like a hindsight problem to me, though. It's a reflection of a company, of an organization, of a world where we didn't know what we were doing. It was the amount of misses that I've worked on personally at 0x that were qualifiably YOLOs. It creates an institutional fear. Coinbase was coming off of buying Paradex and buying a lot of teams that were all very Web3 centric, and they went through their own internal politicking at that time where they were dictating should we become an institutional player and bring in institutional partners, or should we play hard into the Web3 future? And there was a huge conflict. And then CTO, who was part of the earn.com, he had to leave in part of that war, right? That political conflict, right? And to that quality, I see that as, I guess, it's not really hindsight. That's not the right word.
I don't think it's really not hindsight because, again, you always say, right, the future rhymes or whatever. There's many examples in history rhymes, right? Whatever. Yeah. So there's like a lot of examples in business where you could repeatedly see the patterns like this. I don't think it's very unique to crypto.
I think a lot of it's a question of seeing it and doing it is two different things.
Yeah, so it's a question of parallelization and a question of bravery, in my opinion. That's really what it comes down to for most of the product.
And I would say to you is that's history, like that. These companies, if you know their rich history behind the scenes, what they did and how they did it can all be very well explained. And a lot of them does come down to fairly just deep-rooted signals that we got then, and our fear and our uncertainty then, right? And I wasn't privy fully to it, but Coinbase did go through quite a big political conflict internally during that era, trying to dictate what is Coinbase and what should they focus their time on. And Xerox had gone through that as well.
Every crypto company went through that, right? But
yeah, especially that was the bear market, right?
I mean, I was living through the whole KYC situation too, so it was even. Yeah,
Right. So I don't say I'm not surprised to see in such a conflicted environment that people aren't YOLOing as hard as they should be. Like, I don't, and that's why I say it's a hindsight problem, because if they knew that what they know now, they would have attacked harder and owned it harder and had more political willpower to do it. But this was a time where behind the doors, the SEC was knocking
I don't think
on
it's
a lot
complicated.
of companies.
See, I don't think it's really complicated for a company to say, "Hey, we care about the wallet." I really don't think that's complicated.
Well, again,
Yeah,
caring and doing is a totally different difference.
Yeah,
right?
Like especially a company.
Caring
like
and doing
Coinbase,
is different. Fundamentally, two different things, right?
Yeah.
Like MetaMask is still a half-assed wallet.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's still the most half-assed wallet that we're still all using, I think reflects to you how the difficulty of any of these companies who all had the vision and ambition to say, let's go fucking make a better wallet. Right. And Phantom is the best example. Phantom, oh my God. When I was an intern at Xerox, every lunch was a complaining about MetaMask session. It was literally like a group therapy session where we all shat on MetaMask for like every lunch. And that was in like 2018. And the company internally had so many conversations that we got to go build a MetaMask competitor. We never did it. And it finally happened after 3 people left Xerox and started a new company, and pretty much said, we're going to do what we wanted to do 3 years ago, what we should have done 3 years ago. And they finally did it. Right. And so much to take out of this and this, I don't know what to take much out of this, kind of what I just described, but like, this was an era of crypto that like, there was a lot of vision and a lot of ambition. But the whole world was kind of, I felt like, especially in the EVM world, I don't know about the other spaces, but for the EVM side, everybody was telling us that we don't have a reason for the EVM in a fundamental way. We had an idea what we can do, but we just couldn't practically do it.
I just don't see the space as that immature. Like, it's all of a sudden all these things started happening in 2018.
Well, 3AC just freaking went under. Isn't that immature, right?
Like, and I don't really but I don't see it. Like, I'm not saying immature in that way. Really, I meant in terms of the ideas. Ideas have been here really for a long time. Like, the shit started in 2008 proper, right? And so
even earlier, you can argue.
Yeah. And so the people who were in OG Bitcoin, again, you got to remember, these guys were true cypherpunks from our age, right? And they've been thinking about this bullshit for like ever. And when it started happening, there was a lot of very opinionated people starting companies, successful companies, because they're basically Bitcoin bankrolled, right? Coinbase being another one of them.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying, right? It's like, look, these guys, they had the capital, they had the ideas, they had it was just a matter of like bravery and conviction. The ideas they had the same idea. Brian Armstrong has always wanted what's happening right now to have happened. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, Ethereum was actually just a very exciting proof that it's starting to happen. But those ideas have been there.
I get it. Okay, I'm coming towards your side. Yes. Being in one of these organizations in my past.
Gemini bought Nifty Gateway very early on, at a time when everyone was like, what the fuck is Nifty Gateway, right? What is even like?
Which, again, I come down to is we're choosing from a lot of fuck ups to only the successful stories. And
well, I'm choosing a lot of fuck ups and then one successful story.
And so like I guess.
So why did they buy Nifty Gateway when no one else was really doing anything like that? The Gemini Winklevoss.
For one, it's cheap for them to buy it, and two is like, again, I think it was like Xerox thought to buy OpenSea at one point.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
But they didn't.
Because I don't want to go into that. But no, again, and I mean 0x. I mean, OpenSea was going to use 0x V2. I want to say, or no, they were going to use V3, but V3 had a protocol fee, and that was kind of deterred them from using it. Which was a bummer. Real bummer, to be honest.
I would also add, because I'm talking a lot about wallets right now, is like the only reason BitPay made their wallet is to make internal ops easier. And then they were like, fuck it, we might as well make a UI wrapper around this shit, right? And then Ionic framework is what we used before React Native at that time.
Man, Ionic. Okay.
Absolute piece of
shit.
Dates
the wallet.
it dates everything I've ever worked on.
Yeah.
Holy fuck. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I would reflect upon a lot of things on my time at 0x and say we could have done some things different. But now that I feel a little bit more on the side of Will Warren, those guys, trying to build with you guys a business, I'm not surprised. I've never felt more empathetic of why things happen.
No,
right?
100%. It's like the only thing is like our line of work, in my opinion, is like a degree of difficulty more difficult actually, because we're not working on product lines, where it's like you at least can have a single conviction that lasts you a year, 2 years,
yeah.
But it doesn't even work like that. For us, it was like we had to go week to week. So
our business is to YOLO.
So when I mean, I do feel like there is some right to complain because we've been through that life, of product building. So
yeah, I mean, I certainly have my share of frustrations about it.
Yeah.
And we all do, I think, and to a quality, to a merit. I mean, I would like to think that a lot of what we do as a studio has been shaped by our experience, right?
Yeah.
Running
100%.
these within these organizations with our past, so we try to do better, right? That's all we can ask ourselves. I'm looking at our launch table of things: ABF, Reaper, the merge concept, what comes after that.
So much on the go. Yeah.
It's like, this is a year of the YOLO for us. I mean, it's always going to be the year of the YOLO for us, but like,
yeah, pretty much.
This is going to be a lot of new ground, and man, we're going to make a lot of decisions that we're probably going to look in hindsight and be like, crap, why did we?
Yeah.
And we can let's hope that we do not a lot of it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know where we started with this conversation point, but
that's actually a great segue though, talking about what we have in the pipeline. I did want to maybe, take a couple of minutes to speak with you guys, to the audience, about why we're doing this podcast, what it means to us, and what we hope to achieve with it. Because ultimately, we created this podcast for us as a way to share what's on our minds and our takes and how we feel, based on the spirit of Proof of Beauty, which is different than a lot of the organizations in the space. So love to get you guys both, to talk a little bit about what the pod means to you and what we hope to achieve with it.
Go ahead, Ash, if you want.
Yeah, just like, I think we have like a unique thought process on the NFT space and crypto space as a whole. I mean, generally, we spend a lot of the beginning part of the podcast talking about like current events and stuff. There's only so much we can talk about the work we're doing, week to week updates. But that is also, I think, it's really important for us to talk about it every week, and like, because we're so lazy about Twitter and what else, and writing stuff literally on Discord. So this is a space for us to just throw out vomit at basically all the things we're working on each week and thinking about, and then also keep us on constant stream of doing things and keeping that pace up and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, at a strategic sense, it's a reflection of what we're good at when it comes to content producing, and I think the podcast probably is the best medium to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And two, it's we as a business, not to toot our own horn a lot, is we do things very differently than pretty much everybody else. Sometimes to a fault, we're so different.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's probably that.
and if anything, we see it as a value add, hopefully, to just have people be on ground zero with us as we navigate our lives in this business, in this market, and to give people an insight on how does something like ABF comes through the door, right? And what are the discussions around that, or how do recovering DeFi alcoholics react to what happens at DeFi? We do have a fairly unique base of experiences internally that
Mm-hmm.
I keep on coming off a lot of conversations feeling like it'd be great if this was recorded, because I feel like I get a lot out of it, and I feel like maybe certainly other people, in the sense that I like to believe that we're probably the most like willing to cut the bullshit kind of core of people. Like we don't look at NFTs as some kind of silver bullet per like opportunity to do something massive. I think we're really sitting here and very conscious of the limitations of it as well, but also its
Mm-hmm.
power and its and not just willing to do it, but also just to to say that we can do better, right? And I think in a in a market where there's a lot of groupthink, it's very hard to have a counter opinion. I think Ash, you could even bring that. You can speak on that even when you were at NFT NYC. There's a lot of groupthink and there's a lot of like singular mindedness
Yeah,
around what an
because
NFT
it's.
can be.
I think we
Right.
forget how weird it is. Like people forget when you don't disagree with someone, because most of the time we agree with people around us, right?
Yeah.
So when you're in a room full of people and everyone's like jerking each other off over like some rapid NFT stuff, and you have no idea what's going on, it's like then you remember how weird people can be, right? So it's an important distinction, I think.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
to add to that, like we live in a world where you're always one tweet away from being canceled in the crypto markets.
Right.
And so it's very hard to get opinions across. And I think that we're one of the few studios that like not just can say what we say, but have stuff to back it up. Say like we're not just high horsing everybody. I mean, yes, we are high horsing everybody, but like two is it's like, well, we do have a history of taking what we say and applying it into action, right? And I think that helps create a platform for maybe the more common sense and more open-minded approach towards what an NFT itself can do. So yeah, I guess I hope this allows other people to feel like you don't have to be part of that groupthink, and that if anything at the studio, I think that we should always be ready to be wrong about how we interpret NFTs every day.
Right.
And I think every subsequent project we do does deeply and teach me about what an NFT actually is, and that could be down to mechanical design or to just even the simple of like how floor prices work, right? Like there's crap like that. So
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
yeah, so yeah, like that just gives us away, and also it's literally an hour therapy session in some ways for whenever I get pissed about crypto for a week. This is my time to unleash it. So is that.
Awesome, guys. Yeah, the opportunity here is really just to share um, what would be probably like the unorthodox opinion within the NFT community right now, and to continue to, to learn and to press ourselves and figure out what it is we're doing wrong, what we're doing right, But to remain true to the heart of Proof of Beauty and that creative spirit behind it, I don't really see a lot of other studios going beyond just the visual component of an NFT alone. And that's just one area that Proof of Beauty is already excelling on, creating unique stories, IPs around, like, for example, with Hash, a single moment in history where the NFT visual itself is merely just a piece of art that represents a transaction that has such a deeper meaning and perhaps represents something as large as a 3AC going under, or a massive acquisition, or many of the other incredible stories that we've already heard in DeFi and in NFTs. So I really love what it is we can offer, and would be a really beautiful thing if more people could see eye to eye with us and kind of zoom out of that group think and think within alignment of the creative spirit that we're trying to bring to NFTs. And like you said, Dave, we're still really just figuring out what an NFT is. And I think a lot of people think they have the answer already, right? And so
yeah, that's the last statement. I wholeheartedly agree. Is I think too many people think they know what the future of the NFT is, and that is probably the furthest from the truth.
Nobody
and
knows.
yeah, and I think it's our business to tell people in the world that. I think the more we do, the more people will say, the less I know what an NFT can do and can be. Right. And I know that all of you guys have access to our internal registry of crazy ideas, and I think every one of them, if they ever come to light, they all speak towards another shred of thought, of potential with it,
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I think my problem sometimes is like, what do we actually spend our time on versus what we need to do, and we, yeah, yeah, I mean, there, I get both excited and also overwhelmed at times. That what we do, it's like telling people what I work in NFTs is already hard enough.
Yep.
Tell them what we actually do in NFTs is nigh impossible, right? And even within the NFT space, I think we are quite honestly always the weirdos, and that's a good and bad thing sometimes, right? And sometimes it's like, are we doing something correct here? Like, or are we running a business that's a business? And yeah, it pushes us a lot, right? And we're right at the cusp of ushering ourselves into a new future for the studio with all the new IPs.
New era.
And it's a massive new era, and I can't wait to be on podcasts where it's just us rambling about these things, these IPs, what these IPs are inspiring for the future. I think a personal goal of mine is to see a day where we have an IP where you can literally source the history of that IP being built through the podcast. Where
that
you're
would
like,
be amazing.
It's like, okay, this idea was there, and then next week it jumped a little bit, and obviously if that IP can be more public, well, that'd be great. But if it's an IP that we would like to keep under the shelters, we'll keep it on. But it, and so in some ways this is a diary, right? Like, I hope it like captures the spirit of our work, right? And yeah, ABF's coming soon.
Yeah,
and
coming soon.
Yeah. On that note, even ABF may be the first project that we're kind of leaving little breadcrumbs behind about, right? And perhaps the first project that we've entered into this diary that's kind of maybe changed a little bit already since we started first recording. And so I'm excited even to just be able to look back at ABF and be like, how did this morph? How did it change? Because we've already seen it do like just that, right? And so I love that perspective, Dave, to look at this as a diary. Is there anything either you want to add before we wrap this show up today?
Hopefully one day during the podcast, like we can bring in people from the ABF community, like P4 or someone else writing stuff.
Yes.
And just like, talk about shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, I know that there's already some activity going on, and there are some people who would probably be interested in getting on the pod and probably talking a little bit about NFTs and their art. So I'm sure we'll have some quality guests on the show. Really looking forward to picking the minds of some of those artists. But on that note, guys, if you guys want to join the conversation, you guys can find us on Discord, discord.gg/POB. You can also find us on Twitter. Make sure to give us a follow, share this video, like, and subscribe. We sure appreciate anybody who took the time to tune in with us today, Friday afternoon. This has been our diary, and we hope that you guys enjoy just hearing us ramble and talk about the happenings. And we sure appreciate having a platform to be able to do so. So tune in next week, Fridays, 3 o'clock Eastern, and we will see you guys then.